Hello and welcome. My name is Melissa Rebronja. I am a trauma-sensitive healing practitioner, educator, and host at healyourheart.love. And today's guest is Ellie Shoja. Ellie is a celebrity ghostwriter, mindset expert, and motivational speaker with a passion for inspiring personal transformation that creates positive, lasting impact in the world. Ellie is a two-time TEDx speaker and has been featured in various podcasts and publications, including Entrepreneur, The List TV on ABC, Elite Daily, and Thrive Global. For more information on Ellie, go to ellieshoja.com. So welcome, Ellie. Lovely to have you.
So nice to be here.
Yeah, so you and I met through a certain networking community here in Los Angeles, and I would always see your smiling face and positive vibe and energy. You do have that. You do radiate a lot of positivity.
Thank you.
And then feels like maybe 6 months ago, I actually hired you to help me with my book.
Yes.
And you're amazing.
Thank you.
And I recommend you to everyone because you have something very special in a sense that you're able to help other people with clarity. Our work sort of moved from my book to my website copy because what I'm learning is that you don't just have one thing. You're very gifted in many different areas. So I feel very grateful that I'm working with you currently. So thank
Thank
you.
you. And I feel very grateful to be working with you. The work that you do, Melissa, is so impactful and it's so important, I think, in the world. And it's been such an honor to be able to support you in a way that amplifies your voice. Because I think everybody should know about you and know your content and work with you. You really have the ability to help people transform and become more of who they really are. And I think even before we started working together, we were at a networking event and someone was asking you what you do. And I just kind of like chimed in. I'm like,
You answered for me, and I was like,
I,
yeah.
I did. And because even before I could see how important the work is that you're doing. And then after working with you and seeing just the wealth of knowledge that is inside of you and the ability that's inside of you, I'm like, oh my God, everybody needs to know about you. And I never knew this was a superpower for me until recently I started doing it for other people, which is like I'm able to see the big picture and then take all of those random strands and put them into one cohesive message that then connects with people on the other end. And it's one of those things, it's like when you're really good at something, you don't see it as a
Yeah.
as a strength at all. You're just like, you don't notice it. And it took me into my late 30s to notice that I can do that. And I feel so grateful to be able to do that for someone like you, who, when you become discoverable, so many people can benefit from that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Ellie. Yeah. And so glad I found you. And I mean, you not only do you have what you just shared, but you're also able to organize it. Like
Mhm.
I went from being overwhelmed, like someday I'll write a book, but I don't even know where to start. And you already started like a document. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
what? We're started? Like that's it?
That's
So
yeah.
I was like, okay, she's awesome. Yes, let's do this. Yeah. We are here for a specific conversation. The topic is, can you go from atheist to
Mhm.
spiritual?
Yes.
Now, I recently found out that you were an atheist,
Yeah.
and that's what sparked this video. So I would love to know a little bit about your background
Yeah.
and how you were raised.
Yeah. So I had a very unconventional childhood. I grew up the daughter of an international con man, which sounds really cool. People are like, oh, that's so cool. It really was not. He was crazy and abusive, and we moved a lot. So from the age of 9 to 12, we moved probably 30 times. When I was almost 12, like a little over 11, we had to run away from my dad to get away from him and from that life. But by then, the damage had kind of been done. I had severe nervous tics. I was suicidal. I had anger issues. My mom couldn't say two words to me without me just blowing up and being so angry at her. And I was suffering so much that I decided at the age of 12 that a God that allows children to suffer as I had could not exist. So
Mm.
I became an atheist. And for a long time, I was a devout atheist. There is no
Oh,
after
interesting.
this. There's only this. In fact, I would become angry and very triggered by the word God.
Ah.
And the whole idea of God made me very upset. And
Mhm.
part of it was because I felt like I had been so wronged by if a
Mm.
God existed, he
Mm.
had wronged me.
At such a young age too. And just
Yeah.
so people know, like, where did the journey start? Like, what country?
I'm Persian Iranian, so I was born in Iran. When we were 4, we moved to Turkey. And when I was 9, we moved from Turkey to Germany. And when I was almost 12, we ran away from my dad and moved back from Germany to Iran. And until then, by the way, I had no idea I had family outside of my parents and my sister. So we were so isolated.
Mm.
And we went to Iran, and suddenly I realized I have cousins, I have aunts and uncles.
Mm.
And when I was 15, we got our green cards and we were able to come from Iran to America.
Got it. Okay. So was your family religious before you decided that you were an atheist?
Yes. So my
Ah,
family, my Iranian family, I have family who are very religious, still in Iran. So they
okay.
cover their hair, they pray 5 times a day, they fast. Now, my stepsister, they're very religious. My aunt is very, like,
Got
I
it.
have family who are very Muslim. And I should also say that my dad, being a con man, when he was in Germany, he was arrested for the things he done in Turkey. And in jail, he pretty much almost memorized the Bible and became Christian and used religion to manipulate his way
Wow.
out.
Okay.
And so I also saw religion as a form of manipulation,
Yeah.
at that point. It was very convoluted, this idea of like religion and God and how is it connected to my suffering as a child, and everything felt icky,
Mm. Yeah.
felt very icky.
Wow. Okay.
I know that's the technical term for it.
Right. Okay. So you decided at
Mhm.
that young age that you're an atheist.
I did. Yeah.
Amazing. And you were so clear about it.
Hmm.
Wow. I'll share a little bit about my background.
Sure.
So basically, I was birthed into an atheist country. Former Yugoslavia was atheist. I would witness people making fun of God and people that believed that were religious. So literally, my conditioning is religion is stupid. If
Mhm.
you choose to believe that a God exists, you're stupid. So
Wow.
as a kid, I'm like, okay, don't believe in God. And then I remember it was just weird. There were still some people that were religious. I remember being in Dubrovnik, just walking into a church and seeing people pray. And I thought it was the weirdest thing because it was very foreign to me.
Yeah.
So my conditioning was atheist country, atheist family, atheist kid. And then just being uncomfortable with religion because it wasn't something that I was raised with, but I was able to just accept that some people are religious. I had a best friend who was
Mhm.
Greek actually when I moved back to Canada, and I would attend church with her because
Mhm.
that's something that they did, but it was strange for me.
Yeah, that is such a fascinating thing to grow up with that kind of conditioning and that kind of messaging.
So back to you, Ellie. Then what?
So then I was an atheist for 2 decades.
Mm.
I lived my life, and it's interesting because I feel like the journey back to spirituality, and I'll use the G word here, back to God, is a journey, it's an internal expansion journey. Because I was finding my way back, I was very, you have to keep in mind, I was very devout the other way. And that's, I think, kind of a danger that happens with people who take such a strong stance on a topic like this. They make the atheism a part of their identity, and once
Yes.
it becomes a part of your identity, you don't want to challenge it, because then you're challenging who you are, right? And I didn't have the language at the time, but I was struggling with that for a little while. But I was also having what you could call spiritual or mystical experiences,
Hmm.
because I was going through really difficult times. For example, in my mid-20s, when I started my spiritual journey, was during a time when everything was at its worst.
Mm.
So my internal state was a complete wreck. I had nowhere to turn. I was really angry, really depressed. I was having a lot of conflict in my outside world as a result of it. I thought I had bipolar disorder because my mood swings were so extreme. And my ex-husband gave me the book Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Mm.
As I was reading this book, this is one of those books that rearranges you from the inside as you're reading it. You can't read it all in one sitting. You can't even read 10 pages at a time. You have to read like 1 or 2 pages, and then you have to process, and you might go back and reread that thing. And it's so simple. The writing is so simple, and it meets you exactly where you are. Since I've read this book over 6 times at different stages of my life and my spiritual journey, each time it hits me in a new place, to the point that I'm like, did I even read that last time? Was this in the book
Mm.
last time I read it?
Yeah.
I have no recollection of him saying that, because it's meeting me at a different place in my life, but also it's meeting me at a different place within myself,
Yes.
which is really a fascinating phenomena that happens with spiritual text that is very deep.
Right.
So I read Eckhart Tolle's book, and for the first time in probably decades, for- in a very as long as I can remember, I experience a level of relief.
Wow. That's beautiful.
And I feel like, and I remember that moment, I feel like I can breathe, you know?
Wow.
And in that moment, I realized I don't know what more there is, but there is something more.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So a book, like, and I love how you said my spiritual journey
Hmm.
began in that moment and how you just ended it here, that your
Yeah.
soul or
Mhm.
something in you that's deeper had this realization that there is something more.
Yeah. And I I say spiritual journey because we are spirit, right? We are not just our physical bodies. As human beings, we are two things. We are the human, we are the physical that is having a physical experience in the physical world, but we are also the non-physical being. We are the energy, we're the consciousness. You can call it Christ consciousness, you can call it God, you can call it the
Yes.
energy of the universe, you can call it energy, you can call it whatever you want, right? But
Yes.
we are something non-physical that is intelligent,
Yes.
that is operating
Yes.
inside the physical world.
Yeah. And I think some atheists have a hard time with that part. And
Mhm.
they're very stuck on if you can't prove it, no evidence, it doesn't exist. And
Yeah,
it's very interesting. But I love how you said an intelligence.
yeah,
There is an intelligence that we can sense or feel, and you can call it what you want, right?
Totally. And here's the thing, the whole proving thing is fascinating because spirituality is essentially the human, the physical, and the spirit, the being, the gap between them closing,
Yeah.
right? So you become more on and more the collected self rather than the separated self,
Yes.
right? For a long time, a lot of my suffering was because I saw myself separated from everything and everyone. And that separation is rooted in us feeling separated from ourselves, right? If
Yes.
I'm not integrated with myself, if I'm not connected to myself, then I feel disintegrated and disconnected from the world. The
Mm,
moment I feel whole within me, which means the human part of me, the physical and the non-physical spirit joined together in the life experience, I also feel like I am a part of the co-creation that is happening in the physical world.
yeah.
And I'm a part of the co-creation that's happening on the energetic level in
Mm-hmm.
the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because on an energetic level, we are not limited to the physical world. This is only a small part of our experiences. And then when we're non-physical, we are participating in co-creation on a much larger scale. And that feeling of just wholeness is experiential.
Yeah.
So the proof
Yes.
the atheists seek is experiential. And I did too. I was like, if I can't see it, if I can prove it. But here's the thing, once you experience it,
Yeah.
you cannot deny it. I mean,
Absolutely.
you could
Yeah.
deny it if you
Yeah.
really want to, but why deny it? At that point, it's your ego that's saying, nope, I
Yeah.
want to, I am this. I've
Yes.
decided I'm this.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep myself small as possible. But once you experience your vastness and your grandness and all of that, you are why deny it?
Yeah. Something beyond the physical realm. And interestingly, similar to you, because my country, my birth country went through a war, I remember as a young, like a kid, maybe teenager, I was at that time,
Yeah.
I would think, well, if there was a God,
Mm,
surely he would stop this war. Surely
yeah.
he would do something because literally people are killing each other,
Mm,
ethnic cleansing and all that stuff. I
yeah.
mean, we have wars, present day wars,
Yeah.
same thing happening, right? So I'm like, well, if there was this almighty God and sort of like, wouldn't he stop or scare humans? My experience of that something more was I was a singer most of my life and I had this desire of writing songs.
Mhm.
And I started reading the Artist's Way book.
Yeah.
And that book changed my life because she says, call it like similarly, she did use the word God, but she said, use any of these other words, universe, whatever works for you. And then I started songwriting. Like it just was pouring out of me. And I felt this connection to something more. It felt magical in a sense. So for me, that was the moment of starting my spiritual journey. And I
That's
think I was
beautiful.
25. Thank you. And I think I've been on that journey since in terms of the spiritual journey.
Yeah, the creativity is such an amazing, amazing thing because let's talk about what we are, right? If we are not the physical body and its physical experiences, right? What are the physical experiences, the emotions, the thoughts, the words, and the actions, right?
Yeah.
So those are the four. And a lot of times we identify as those four things as our identity, as who we are, right?
Yeah.
But I call those who we are being in the moment because when you break them down, all four of those things are very transient. Your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, and your words can change from one moment to the next, depending on whatever new information you introduce,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
if I come and I'm like really mean to you, Melissa, and you know, you might go and say, "Oh wow, like Ellie is is a total bitch, like she's this or that. But then if you find out, right, so your emotions about me, your actions about me, your words about me, your thoughts about me are a certain way. But then what if you find out that my grandmother died that morning?
Right.
And I'm really mean.
Yeah.
Right? So now all of a sudden you have different thoughts about me, different
Yeah.
emotions about me, different words that you're saying to people about me, different
Yes.
actions that you're taking towards me, right?
Yes.
Very transient, and literally from one moment to the next, they're changing depending on our physical life experience and the information we're receiving. So if we are not these four things, what are we really? We are the energy of creation, individualized in human form. We are the intelligence of the universe that craves being creative, meaning it creates
Yes.
it's our sole purpose. The reason we even come into the physical form is for the purpose of creating in the physical realm to get that experience.
Yeah.
When we're not physical, we're creating in a non-physical realm. We're creating planets that we can then come into and have physical experiences in.
Right.
So that's all we are. That's who we are. And the moment you close that gap, it is not an accident that you would find a way to translate vibration that you're receiving into the form that happens to be prominently important and interesting for you specifically in this moment,
Right.
which happens to be songwriting and singing.
Right.
For
Yeah.
somebody else, it's painting. For somebody else, it's writing. For somebody else, it's creating a business. For somebody else, it's doing hair.
Yes.
There's so much variety, and we're constantly receiving blocks and blocks and blocks of information. And all of us, depending on the hierarchy that we're creating within ourselves about what's important and what's not that important to us individually in these physical forms, we are giving life. We are translating that knowledge into specific things we're then putting into the world and sharing with everybody else. That is our primary function in life. And that's why we are here.
Yeah.
That's why we're physical. That's why
Yeah.
we create Earth and come into it so that we have this experience.
Right. Yeah. You sound very spiritual, so to speak. But let's talk about
Yes.
religions. And what do you think about people that judge people that haven't chosen like a religious path,
Yeah.
and they look at spiritual people just like these lost souls that don't belong anywhere? Right? Because you're not following
Yeah.
like one of the five main paths, I guess. The
Yeah.
three Abrahamic religions and Hinduism and Buddhism.
My stance on religion is like anything else in the world. It is a path that provides an opportunity for the closing of the gap between the physical and the non-physical selves. So religion provides an opportunity for us to regain our connection to our God self, to our spirit, to the intelligence that lives within us. Is it used that way always? No, no, because it is in the hands, it's a tool that is in the hands of disconnected humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then it's when you have somebody who's disconnected, they're going to use any tool to disconnect, right?
Yeah.
To create more separation. You give a hammer to someone who is nuts and wants to break things, they're going to break things. You give it to someone who understands how to build things, they're going to build things. So there are
Yes.
plenty of religious people who are very spiritual people, and they operate from a place of oneness, and there's a plenty of spiritual religious people who are not. And
Yes.
that also, by the way, is true for spiritual people.
Yes.
There's people who
Absolutely.
call themselves spiritual who actually use the language of spirituality to disconnect and separate and feed their ego into thinking that I am better than you because I have this connection and I can prophetize and I can, I can see the future and I can, you have to come to me and I can tell you this, like there's plenty of those spiritual people. And then there's plenty of spiritual people who show up and demonstrate spirituality, meaning true connection with the self, which then creates connection in the world and closes the gaps of separation everywhere that they go, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's plenty of atheist people who call themselves atheists who are actually very spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah,
Who
absolutely.
show up in a very, very spiritual way. There's
Yeah.
a lot of agnostics who show up in a very, very spiritual way, meaning they show up in a connected way, in a
Yes.
way that is rooted in love and compassion and connection and wholeness rather than separation. So personally, I don't worry about how anybody else is showing up.
Yeah.
My goal in life is to perpetually close the gap within myself and show up in the most spiritual or in the most connected way that I can from every moment to the next. So I can only focus on me because I only have control over me,
Yeah.
right? And
Absolutely.
the way we change the world is through ourselves. I often say the path to world peace is through our own hearts. That's why I created an oracle deck that's called Your Heart Knows the Way. Your heart. Yeah, oh, there it is. It's your heart that knows the way. That means not even religion, not even science, not even anything. It's
Yes.
all through our own hearts.
There is a saying that everyone is on a spiritual journey,
Yes.
whether they know it or not,
Yep.
right? And I do believe that
Yeah.
resonates for me. Something that you alluded to is that a spiritual journey, I do feel, is a private journey.
Yeah.
And I also think that us living in North America, Los Angeles specifically, we are privileged to have
Yeah.
these options because I think a lot of places don't. You're kind of like, you're born into that.
Yeah.
You're born into this, and this is what we believe.
Mhm.
So how does that person find spirituality? And my wish is that all religions, like churches or mosques, were more like spiritual houses where all spirits are welcome, or people that want to connect with their spiritual self rather than this like separated, this is this, that is that. That's kind of sad that that's how the world is today.
Well, I think we're gonna get there. We're
Yeah,
getting
I
there.
hope so. Yeah.
Whether it's in our lifetimes or in the 100 years or 1,000. And honestly, it doesn't matter when it is because energy doesn't die, right?
Yeah.
So we have been here since before the creation of this planet, and we're gonna continue incarnating on various planets long after Earth is gone. Right? And Earth is serving a specific purpose for us as the non-physical. And that's what it means. We are all on a spiritual journey because we are all spirit, we are all energy that is on a journey, right? So whether we are conscious as the physical being or not is completely irrelevant because guess what? You are completely unconscious, you're sleepwalking through this physical existence and you die. In the
Yeah.
physical world, you die. Guess what happens to you? You reemerge in the non-physical and you're like, oh crap, see, this is what I did there. And then that's what I did there. That's why I lost my footing over here. And you strategize on how you're gonna come back and then try again. It's like playing a live action video game, you assess what you did, look at what you would have liked to learn, and then put yourself in a new situation where that learning is possible and you come back. So you haven't lost anything. Yes, maybe you could have had more fun in the physical world, but really your spirit has not lost anything. because it's just going to come back. What do you have as spirit? All you have is time. You're
Right. Yeah.
infinite knowledge. And that's the other thing, Melissa, is that you are, think of yourself as what you actually are without the meat suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are infinite intelligence, omniscient, pure positive energy of love and creation
Mm-hmm.
that is capable of creating an entire universe in order to have a playground of physicality,
Mm-hmm.
that is capable of creating entire planets with all sorts of life forms and plants and all fun things in it,
Mm-hmm.
for the purpose of physical experience, coming into it and having a physical experience. So how would you, as that being, like to come into the physical world? Would you like to come as the omniscient, all-powerful being that you are? You wouldn't,
Mm.
because what would be the fun in that? The
Mm.
fun is in the limitations. It's not in the omniscience.
Mm.
If the fun was in the omniscience, we would not go through the experience of creating a universe and planets and beings to come into,
Yeah.
right? The
Mm-hmm.
fun is in the discovery. The fun is in coming into a being that is limited by the amount of information it is able to receive, so limited, in fact, that it has to prioritize what is important and what's not. So you and I can hear the same song and we will hear completely different things because you have a musician's ear and I don't,
Mm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's someone else with perfect pitch will hear even things that you might not hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fun, right? So we limit ourselves by the senses, we limit ourselves by the physical capacities of the physical form in order to force ourselves into creating a hierarchy of what's important to us, in order to force ourselves into creating into identifying what we want to do, what we want to create in the physical form. And that's why physicality is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And when I now encounter something in the physical world that is uncomfortable for me, I'll say, well, do you want to learn this lesson here and now? Like if I'm triggered, I'm like, do you want to learn it in this life or do you want to learn it in the next one?
Mm.
Because it doesn't matter to my spirit. It doesn't matter to the non-physical part of me. It'll learn it here. It'll learn it in the next one. It'll learn it in 100 lives from now. It does not matter to my spirit because all it has, it's infinite amount of time. Energy doesn't die,
So
right?
tell me how you arrived to this place that, because it seems like when you talk about this, there's almost like a knowing that that's what happens. But how do you really know?
Mm.
How did you go from atheist, there's no God, to this, right? To like, this is, we're like, just curious.
Yeah, a lot of books
Yeah,
and a lot of personal experience that validated the knowledge in those books.
got it.
I love Michael Newton's books about life between lives,
Mm.
the journey of souls, the destiny of souls. Those books I've read multiple times, and I've actually had a life between lives hypnosis session myself,
Okay.
where I spent time in the space between lives as the non-physical, and I saw the people around me, the closest people around me,
Ah,
what they look like as their energy selves. And I
oh, wow.
spent time as my energy self, just the things that I like doing when I'm not in the physical body.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of past life experiences, both under hypnosis and not under hypnosis. And I've had experiences where just memories from past lives. When I was younger, I realized when I was younger, I used to have these memories, and I didn't know what exactly they were until I was able to understand. The thing, Melissa, is that when you have these mystical experiences that are not rooted in the physical form, they have a level of realness to them that is on another level from the physical form. And
Yeah.
if you have viewers, if you've experienced this, you know this to be true. Like, you can have a split second of experiencing yourself as a spirit, and it changes your entire life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Entire life, because in that moment, you have knowledge, you have pure knowledge that you gain access to. And it's almost like you're dreaming, like when we dream and then we wake up, that level of soberness that we experience, and we're like, oh yeah, that was the dream, and this feels so much more real. That's what it feels like. It's like, it's in those moments you're literally waking up as your non-physical self, and it feels so much more sober than the physical experience, which then is the fuzzy thing of the dream.
Right. So, what is your definition as a spiritual person of God? What is God to you?
In Michael Newton's books, he kind of like explores this idea through the hypnosis. He did like thousands of hypnosis sessions of regressing people into the lives between lives. And some of the discoveries that he made trying to get close to where the creation moment happened, right? And the things that I've read in his books kind of like color my definition. And it also echoes some of the things that are said in the Bible. Like the Bible says we are created in God's image.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we as physical beings are not created in God's image, but
Mm-hmm.
we as the energetic beings are created in
Right.
God's image, right? So
Right.
you have you and by the way, this has also been echoed in A Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
It's been echoed in, I can't remember the title, but several books that I have read,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual texts that have been channeled. There is a consciousness, there's an energy, a conscious energy that existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I say existed in our linear time, but there's really, where we are energetically, there is no linear time. There's no time. Time is created by physical creation, right? Once we
Mm-hmm.
made the universe physical, time was created. So we have the energy that exists. It's pure positive consciousness that wants to create. So then it creates a replica of itself, right? So it's energy, pure positive energy of creation. It pulls a piece of itself and creates a replica of itself. So that's what it means. We are created in the image of God. We are pure positive energy of creation that has been created by pure positive energy of creation.
Right. So then God is this like the original creative energy. It's not like a man
It's
in the
the
sky.
original
Yeah.
creative. It's not a man or a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all just our physical egos.
Yeah. Right.
It's just energy.
Right.
It's consciousness.
Yeah. That makes
It's
sense. Yeah.
consciousness, it's love, it's energy. So now what happens to this? We are created, and the only difference between these two consciousnesses is that one created the other didn't create the first. That's
Mm-hmm.
the only difference. But this also has a desire to create.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates the physical universe for the purpose of just creation, right?
Yeah.
So now this is who we are, right? So this creates all of the different pieces of itself, the physical universe, and then splits itself up, which each part, Rumi has a quote that says, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in one drop.
Yeah.
And I never understood that quote until I understood this thing, that the energy, when a piece of it separates, it is as whole as the original.
Yeah.
All of the original is in the separated piece. So then we create the physical universe, we split ourselves up into as many billions and billions and billions, trillions of pieces that are perfect energetic beings, and we come into physical worlds. And some of us don't come into physical worlds, and we just have fun.
The interesting thing about Rumi is that he was such an enlightened spirit, but he was reading the Quran, for example.
Yeah.
He was a Muslim man with the Quran, and yet his creativity is so beautiful and spiritual that so many of us resonate with.
But the Quran was also a translation of that intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? It was connection. It's one person, Muhammad, connected to that wisdom. There's a lot of incredible, like all of the major religions in the world will say that God is love. Every one of them.
Yeah.
God is love. God is the energy of love, because love is the energy of create. Love is not an emotion. It transcends emotions. It is a state of being. And when you feel love, you feel connection. You feel connection to yourself.
Absolutely.
You feel clarity. You feel wisdom. You feel knowledge. You receive knowledge. Muhammad was illiterate. He couldn't read or write, but he was able to memorize this poetry. And then he would come and recite it, and then people would write it down. Same with Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Same with Buddha. They receive this knowledge, they translate it into words, and then it gets into the hands of people.
Exactly. I was just thinking that because they add stuff that didn't belong.
The Bible was written by people who didn't understand what Jesus was saying. Sometimes I'll go to church and, the pastor is like saying what Jesus said, and then has a translation of it. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not what he meant.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the humans ruin everything. Absolutely. Are you familiar with Colin Tipping's 6 paradigms of belief?
I am not.
Yeah. So Colin Tipping wrote a number of books. This one is Radical Self-Forgiveness. What I like about it is that in this book, he lists the 6 different paradigms that humans can be, and it's so empowering. So, paradigm 1 is basically, he describes atheists. So very scientific, secular, rational view of life. Like that's paradigm number 1. Paradigm number 2 is religious beliefs.
Yeah.
So what we just talked about, and that's where their spirituality fits. Paradigm number 3 is I am somewhat open to spiritual ideas and find them intellectually interesting, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself a very spiritual person. So there's like a 3rd one, and then a 4th one, and then a 5th one. And the 6th one talks about Godheads. And then you kind of give yourself a rating, and then now write your own personal worldview below to complete the exit. Like how beautiful. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think we need more of this, like normalizing that. Yes, there are these spiritual beliefs, and then where are you in that spectrum?
Yeah.
We need more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I went from atheist probably to pretty like way out there right now.
Yeah.
Where most people are kind of in between. And, like the topic is, how do you go from one to the next?
Yeah. And can you go? Obviously,
Can
we
you go?
can,
And,
because we've both done it.
absolutely, yes, you can go, because I'm here and I've
Yes.
gone from one extreme to the other extreme, right? But the how is important. The how is about, don't tie your identity to those 4 things. Your thoughts, emotions, words, and actions that were rooted in beliefs that you were holding, right? So don't tie your identity to transient stuff, and just be open to having experiences that
Absolutely.
don't fit your current ideology.
Yeah. And also be open that other people have different paths,
Yes,
because that's never going to change.
totally. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, all paths lead
Yeah.
to the same destination,
Yeah.
so I don't try to convince anyone or, preach to anyone. I have this is how I see the world, and if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and it's totally fine to let people be on their own path. If you're trying to prove your ideology and point of view, you don't really believe it.
It's always annoying. Like, doesn't matter whether it's an atheist trying to prove, whether
Yeah.
it's a Christian, just like,
I mean, think of it this way, like every day the sun comes up,
yeah.
right? And then every day it goes down, and then there's nighttime. When it's night, you have a level of trust and relaxation because you know the sun is gonna come up, right? It's gonna come up. And you have that deep knowing that the sun is always going to come up the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what would happen if you didn't have that? If every time the sun went down, you were like, oh, what if it doesn't come up tomorrow? What if the sun disappears? What if it just vanishes? And what if it's something that can be stolen, right? There's anxiety that's created within you. So then you have to constantly prove to yourself and to others that, you know what? No, there's the sun and it's going to come up. And these are all of the reasons, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
But if you have
Yeah.
absolute certainty about it, you're not going to try to prove anything. And if somebody says, no, you know what, the sun is going to get stolen, it's going to burn out, it's not going to come up, I know it, you're going to be like, dude, just relax, go to sleep, just go to bed, you're going to be fine. You're not going to try to prove anything to them. It's
Yes,
the same with your beliefs, right? It's like if somebody
absolutely.
comes up to me and says, Ellie, you're just full of shit. You don't know anything. I'm like, okay, I
Right.
don't know anything.
Right.
It
Yeah,
helps me though. These are the experiences I had. This is how the world makes sense to me.
absolutely. And I think
Our
the
world.
more open we are, the more people will open up to us. Because the people that are super judgmental, what they don't understand is that people just won't share their truth with you. They just sense you're closed. So I'm not going to share all my experiences. And there's a really interesting show called I Survived
Yeah.
Beyond and Back, where people have had
Mm.
death experiences. And I love watching those kinds of shows. And what I found interesting is that each person that had a near-death experience, in some ways, there were a lot of similarities, but they all interpreted it
Yeah.
to what happened to them from their own paradigm.
Yes.
So it fits in for them. Like, so that was
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we put the world through our own
Yeah,
filters.
exactly. Yeah. So even death, even like near-death experiences, very, very interesting.
Well, the near death, we go to a certain point and then we come back,
Yeah.
and we're still not fully on the other side to see what the other side is. You're still kind of like at the
Yeah, the
gate.
in between, absolutely.
Yeah. You're gonna interpret it the way, you're gonna see the people that are there for your specific support.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And depending on so many different things.
Yeah. Any last words, Ellie, of wisdom on this topic of can you go from atheist to spiritual?
Yeah, I think the path of spirituality is a path of letting go and letting drop away the gunk. And that requires an internal gaze. It requires you to go into yourself. And it's uncomfortable.
Hmm.
So the spiritual journey is a path of erasing what is not you
Hmm.
so that you can become who you really are, right? In the world, within
Mm-hmm.
yourself and in the world. And the more you do that, people are going to outside say, wow, you are changing. You're like a different person. To you, it's going to feel like I am finally myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're going to feel like you're a different person and you are showing up. You are being a different version of yourself because your thoughts, emotions, actions, and words are changing in real time as you connect more and more to yourself. So the reason I'm saying that is to highlight the importance of working with someone like Melissa. The process of connecting more to yourself, go inward, don't be afraid, and connect with Melissa or someone like Melissa who can guide you through that and help you, because I did not go from suicidal, angry, severe nervous tics that you could not ignore for decades of my life
Mm.
into a complete peaceful existence where anything that comes my way, I meet it with excitement and a smile, right?
Mm.
It doesn't matter. Is it a breakup? Is it health crises? Is it a global pandemic? I look at it and say, okay, this is amazing. And I feel it. And I feel it. I feel the excitement, and I see the positive and exciting thing in it, in that
Mm.
contrasting experience. I didn't go from everything is terrible to everything is amazing all the time by myself. I had so many teachers. I've been to so many workshops. I've worked with so many people like Melissa who have helped and guided me through the most difficult things and helped me gain all of the tools that I needed to make that transition, to become more and more and more and more and more myself.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you so much for creating the space for this dialogue.
Yeah, this was a great dialogue, and hopefully we'll have you back for more.
Yay!